2017 was honestly a really great year for me. I was able to be the first in my family to get a college degree. I was able to move back home and be with my family after being away for 4 years. I got my first big girl reporting job. 2017 was just, it was really good for me. And then suddenly December hit and it wasn't so good anymore. There was a movement that had begun 2 months prior in October, known as the Me Too movement. And it was basically sexual harassment, sexual assault survivors coming forward with their stories and being open about what had happened to them. And come December, I then became a survivor with her own story to tell. Now, fast forward to January, where the women's marches began to take place all over the country, and there was one specific one happening in New York City that stood out to me, because one of my favorite singers, Halsey, ended up reciting a very powerful poem that she'd written in regards to her own experience with sexual assault and rape, titled A Story Like Mine. Now, I was aware that the march was occurring all over the country because it was all over social media, but it wasn't until I was scrolling through Twitter that I saw that Halsey was actually able to deliver this piece, and truthfully, it hit me harder than anything ever has. Listening to that speech didn't just remind me of my own experience with sexual assault a month and a half prior, but it also gave me a lot of insight into the fact that even those whom we feel live perfect lives still face these kinds of hardships. It can happen to anybody, and I feel like that's what this poem showed. It showed that, it doesn't discriminate no matter who you are, regardless of your race, your age, your gender, your status in life. I feel like this piece gave people a little bit of an insight as to the fact that it can happen to anybody. And I'm sure you might be wondering, how could a poem that's so dark and depressing end up being, one of your favorites? And it's because it's raw, it's raw and it's honest. And for once, I feel like it's a topic that's not being brushed under the rug. It's not being hidden. It's being brought out into the open for, how devastating it actually is. And I felt like that's something that we needed. I feel like as a society, sometimes we have to see how devastating and how painful and how horrible some things can be in order for us to be able to really understand it. This piece, it inspires me for so many different reasons. It inspires me to want to speak up about my own experiences in order to be able to help others and comfort them. Hearing Halsey speak about her experience, that made me feel comfort. It made me feel like I wasn't alone, even though this is someone who doesn't even know I exist. But just knowing that there are other people out there who have gone through it, that brings automatic comfort to me. When it comes to being able to give a presentation, be able to make a speech, to me, it inspires me to be as authentic as I can with an audience. It reminds me to always be honest and not be afraid to let that vulnerability and emotional part of myself show through, because that's what resonates with people. It did for me, no matter how hard it was, but I feel like it helped to get the message across.